Welcome to another episode of Open Ninth, Conversations Beyond the Courtroom in the Ninth Judicial Circuit Court of Florida. And now, here's your host, Chief Judge Lisa Munyon.
Hello, and welcome to Open Ninth. Back in the studio with me today is the Director of the Florida Department of Health in Orange County, Dr. Raul Pino. When he was here last, we talked exclusively about COVID and its continuing impact in our community. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the man behind Orange County's COVID response and hear his story, which is very interesting. I'm thrilled to have you here again, Dr. Pino. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So, I can tell from your accent that you did not grow up in Orange County.
No.
So, can you tell me about your upbringing and where you're from?
I'm from Cuba. I was born in the central part of the island, right in the middle of the island. And to a very modest family. I was born in 1963, just right after the revolution. It was in 1959, the revolution. My mother was not involved at all in politics or the process. My father was very involved. And
How was your dad involved?
So my dad, when the revolution came into power, my dad was cutting sugarcane. But he was a bright individual, very bright. And though he, with just elementary school, went into university because the revolution gave the opportunity. You took some tests and you can perform and then you move forward. And then he did his high school right away, went into college, and he became a lawyer. And then he became the Supreme Court judge for my province, my state. We call it that province. So that he was very involved.
And when he practiced law, what kind of law did he practice, if you remember?
Yeah, criminal law. That was his area.
Did he prosecute or defend?
No, he was a judge.
Oh, he did. He was a judge the whole time. That he was a lawyer.
Yes, because in Cuba, different than the United States, you don't have, after the revolution, you don't have a jury of your peers. You have a jury of judges and what they call civil judges. Those are individuals in the community that have gone through some level of legal training, and they become part of that jury.
And if I have never studied Cuba's legal system, but I have talked to other judges from other countries in Central and South America. And they have, judges are really civil servants. They take an exam and pass the exam, and then they take exams to go higher and higher in the system. Is Cuba that same way?
No. Cuba is a dictatorship. It's by appointment.
Okay. So, where did your interest in medicine come from?
So, I don't know, because I was supposed to be a judge, a lawyer. I think I even have it it's in the car. In my wallet, I have a picture that my dad gave to me. I have never took it out of my wallet. And he was alive when he gave it to me. And the picture says in the back, for someone that will replace me as a lawyer. And it was in 1979, I think, something like that he signed that.
1977.
1977.
Signed by Papi.
Papi, yeah. So I was supposed to be a lawyer. But somehow something happened. My grandmother was a healer. And I always was intrigued by the things that she did. She lived in a farm down in the countryside, and people would come and she would heal and do things, and I think that's where things started to be some kind of little questioning about becoming a doctor. And
when you say your grandmother was a healer, that's interesting.
Yes.
I think they call them curandera.
Curandera, yeah.
In Cuba.
Yes.
And did she know herbs and plants that could help individuals with specific...
Yeah, she would do that, which we know some. She was not interested in transmitting that to us. She actually saw it as a curse more than a blessing. If you will talk to her, she will tell you that gift that she had, she called it the gift, was a curse and not a blessing.
Did you ever understand why she thought that?
She said, because you carry with you all that energy that you take from people who come sick and you heal. And then you have to deal with that. She actually got Alzheimer's very early in her life. She was in her 60s. And she died when she was in her 80s. And she wrongly, probably, attributed the Alzheimer's so early when she was diagnosed to healing so many people.
Well, when you are a healthcare worker, whether you're a healer or a medical doctor, you do come into contact with
Absolutely.
with a lot of people with illness that can transmit it to you.
But she will, fascinating. She could diagnose, and I know this is going to sound horrible to people that are listening to this, but I have seen it. So I don't have an explanation. I don't know how it happened. I just don't have an explanation. But she will diagnose gender of babies by touching the belly and doing things. She will heal your liver and your stomach with some massages. She will use spider webs for these, sugar for that, this tea. It was just fascinating. And whatever is true or not, whatever is science behind that or not, what I have a privilege of is the seeing a part of our society that doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's where my privilege has been born at that time and have met her. My kids will not have that privilege of seeing that part of human history that we don't carry so much.
Right. Well, if you're a student of history, you know that for millennia, healers have been using medicines, herbs that are available, and unfortunately, a lot of that knowledge was lost over the centuries. But it is fascinating because there are some very interesting natural substances that can do a lot for humankind.
Absolutely fascinating. It's an absolutely fascinating world.
So how did you come to study medicine then in Cuba?
So in Cuba, at the time, I don't know how it's now. I left like 25 years ago, so things have changed a lot. You have the right to, depending on your high school GPA, you were placed in a ranking. And then on that ranking, you will have the choices. You will put a first choice, second choice, and third choice of the careers that you wanted to pursue. And in the depending how many people asked for the placement before you, you would get the opportunity if there was less over. I think I was like number 10 in my GPA at my high school. And then I was able to get medicine. Maybe 4 or 5 came, and I was able to get one.
Oh, wow. And is studying medicine in Cuba a lot like studying medicine here in the United States?
A little bit different. We don't have colleges in Cuba. You go from high school to university, and you have technical schools between high school and university, but you don't have college. Everything that you get in college here, it gets blended into high school.
Like your general English
and
or
math and science.
Literature. Yeah.
Now, there are some careers like medicine that require a more intense science background. So the first 2 years of med school in Cuba are what is called basic science. And then you get intense training in, biology, physiology, pharmacology, all those basic science of medicine, anatomy. And then on the third year, from third to sixth, you go into clinical practice. And then third year, 4th year, you are always shadowing a doctor. Depending on your qualification and what area you work in, by the 5th year, then you concentrate in 4 basic aspects of medicine: internal, gynecology, surgery, and pediatrics. Those are the 4 rotations that you do in the 5th year. And at that level, depending on your qualification, they will allow you to see patients by yourself, always with a doctor close by you, a person that has license. And then in the 6th year, you go into a specialization where you just choose one of those 4 or any other, and then you can do more after years of services in the community. Most doctors in Cuba have to go for 3 years to serve in the community at a lower position assigned by the state. in order to pay for the contribution of society to your college.
So yeah, so basically to pay back college.
Yes.
So what did you choose to do?
So in medicine, I was interested in burn treatment because the hospital that I was assigned in Havana for my rotation has one of the few burn units in Havana. There were 2 or 3, and the hospital had one. And just by accident, I got really interested in burn treatment. What really cultivated me is that it had both components. It had the clinical component of treating burns, so that is very complicated. It's intensive care, basically. And then it has a surgical component, which is all the screen grafting and all the cleaning and everything that happened with burn. And that's what attracted me to it, that it had both, because I wasn't able to choose between, do I go clinical or do I go surgical? And that was the debate. And that one, because they have intensive care training, I was interested. But in Cuba, burn treatment and plastic surgery are one specialty. So I have to do both in order to fulfill that dream. And the other tricky part is that you can only be trained in burn treatment at the time in Cuba and an Army hospital. So then I have to become part of the Army, a medic, to be able to get that training.
Oh, so you joined the Cuban Army to
Yes.
become a plastic surgeon and to treat burns?
Yes.
How long did you practice medicine in Cuba?
I graduated in 1987. The last day I practiced was May 20th, 1993.
So getting from Cuba to the United States is not typically very easy.
No.
How did you come to be here? And I understand it took more than once.
Yeah. So that's an interesting story. And I'm smiling and half a smile on my face, but that has not been the case for many. Many people have died trying to cross. So it's a very long story, but to make it short, I tried with friends to come by boat. And we built a boat out of aluminum tubes.
Oh.
Because we thought it would float, and we did all this science. We got all dressed in black. I have a child at the time, 2 years old. That was crazy to make that decision, but that's how desperate you are. And I've been traumatized by the memories of me showing my child. I have to talk to Raul. I don't know if he remembered this. But for weeks, I trained my child to float on my back and hang from my neck because I was concerned that that boat could not make it and want to be able to take some action. How stupid.
Or desperate.
Or desperate. But that desperation takes you to stupidity very quick. And
what made you desperate enough to take such a risk?
That's a very interesting question. So many things. It was just not one thing. First, I have a wife at the time, and I'm very thankful to her. She knows this. Actually, we were talking the other day about this. She wanted to come. She didn't believe in the system. She was disappointed. She wanted a better life for her child. And she's an excellent mother. And that was one element. But things that contributed that really, really affected me is I lived only maybe 20 miles from a hospital. I will have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day to be able to be in surgery by 8. I was dead. I remember taking naps in the floor of the ORs between surgery because I couldn't take anymore. And then getting home, it was from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. It would take me 4 hours for a 28 miles trip because I have to take 4 buses. That was one element. But the thing that I really remember the most is I was in my Army uniform waiting for one of the buses, the last bus. I had holes in my shoes, the uniform shoes, because there were no shoes. And I have to have the shoes or you will get penalized. So I put cardboard inside of the shoes. And it started to rain. And it's something I hate in my life is to have my feet wet. I hate to be wet, but feet, oof. And it started pouring. And the bus stop, the bus shelter was full. So I was just exposed, trench. And at that time, because it was in the area where he lived at the time, Fidel Castro came into the limousine and the caravan. And I said, I'm not going to use the word, but it was with F. And I said, I had it.
So you were not, you having cardboard in your shoes and wet cardboard at that, you were not overly impressed with Castro being in his limousine, completely dry and oblivious to the plight of all of the people that were around him.
I just had it. It may be unjustified, it may be just simplistic, but I don't think that is a one thing. It's an accumulation of things and the loss of freedom. But in my case, at the time where I didn't know freedom at all, I have no idea what it was. And we were not pursuing materialistic things because we didn't have that in Cuba either. But we were happy at some point. Maybe because we didn't know any better, or didn't know any better, or because we were oblivious to our own situation because of lack of information. But at the time, the decision, I would lie to you if the decision was, oh, it was about freedom. No, I didn't know freedom. For me, the decision was about economics and future at the time. And it was mostly about my son, what I didn't want him to experience. That was the conversation, that was the discussion, that was the agreement with my ex-wife now.
So what happened in that homemade boat when you were trying to get to the United States?
Oh, God. So we all got dressed in black. This was an entire operation. This is our fantasy and our desperation. And the sad part is that we were not the only ones, and there are many who have died. And that's the sad part of what's happening in Cuba too, at this point where we are taping this. And so the boat got built. We were biking to get on the boat, and we got news that the boat sank as soon as they put it in the water. So that was it too. That was another indication this is not the way.
So what did you do then?
So we returned home, but the security had an informant in the group that was about to leave, which now makes sense, when you look back. And so they for about a week, and I wasn't expecting this part, so I don't have the day straight. It kind of blur a little bit. But for about a week after that, they follow me everywhere in a way that they want me to know that they knew and they were following.
Yeah.
And later on, they explain why. And I will go into surgery. I was getting trained for nose surgery at the time, which I hate nose surgery, so I never done that. I never would do one. But I have to go through the training. And they were outside the OR. I mean, I'd see them. I could see them. And when I went home, we live in a place called Playa Baracoa. We live next to the ocean, so there's like a ocean wall front across our house, and then the ocean. They will sit, a couple of them, in that bench all night. And they will come and close vehicles. Russian military trucks, jeeps has a very particular sound. And they will come, open and close the door in the middle of the night. So they did that for a week. Then one night I was coming from the hospital, and I knew I was getting really tired of the thing. So I think it's Sunday. It's Sunday. It has been a Sunday. I have to bike 10 miles to my mother's-in-law home to get half a little of milk a day for Raul.
Wow.
Yeah. So I will go every other day, and then she will have a liter for me. But he will get half a liter at the time. I don't know what is now, a day, and I have to bike to get it. So at that day, I went to get. We all went, and it looks like they lose control of us. And when they saw the house closed or whatever, they start asking for us around the town. And it's a very small town. It's like a fishing village. So when we came back, we were all on bike, I think. When we came back, a couple of neighbors said, hey, they were looking for you. Hey, they were looking for you. And I just had it. So I went to the barracks of the town, knocked at the door, and said, were you looking for me? I'm here. What do you want? Because even talking about it gave me anxiety. It was getting to a point that it was not able to tolerate anymore. So next Monday, the Monday after, when I came from the hospital, I got out of the bus, and I saw my next door neighbor, who was in her 80s, and she was very attached to the revolution, getting on a walkie-talkie. I said, that was weird. I didn't know she has a walkie-talkie, but I didn't connect it because I'm kind of silly. I just want to get home. So I took my shirt off at the door. Raul came running to me, Papi, Papi, Papi. He always bring candies or whatever, make it fun. I put the shirt on the back of the shirt. They were at the door already. They said, hey, Dr. Pino. I wasn't expecting it. So when I saw it, I said, oh, boy. And they were fully in uniform. And I knew one of the guys from the hospital because he was the secret police in the hospital. So I said, okay. I said to them, do I need to bring my toothbrush? Like saying, am I going to stay longer? Or they said, oh, no, we have a situation in the hospital, and we need your help. So-and-so is calling you, the director of the hospital. I said, okay. And then one of them asked for water. Our fridge was broken. I have to go to the next door neighbor to get him the water. This guy saw me walking through the back of the house. He walked from the front, parallel to me, with his hand. The holster was off. With his hand. I'm not going to repeat the word, but it starts with M and F. I say, this guy is going to shoot me. This guy is ready to shoot me. And I have done nothing but just wanting to have a better life. So they took me. Raul cried in front of Raul, crying like crazy. And they took me to a place that they never told me where the place was. I don't even at this point know where the place was. It was in the middle of the night. I was in kind of basement, some kind of base. And they never told me or told my family where I was. I was there for a week. Detained and interrogated. Never, I have to say, never physically touched. I know that that's not the case for many, but in my case, they were very respectful of me. Although psychologically, they did everything. And I said to them, you need to stop because I'm going to tell you everything. We are here, so I'm not going to hide that I was trying to leave.
And I bet your family was very worried not knowing where you were or hearing from you for a week.
So when I left that night, Raul has asthma when he was a kid. And the next day in the morning, because when they took me to a small room, the guy said, Ben comes with a uniform, with a prisoner's uniform. Give it to me. I said, change. I said, for what? Oh, you are going inside. I said, I was told that I was coming here to talk. Oh, no, you are detained. Give me your watch, give me your wallet, give me everything. You're in. So next day, the same guy that arrested me came. They took me to a very nice room and said, we want to know what's happening at home. We know we took you. Do you have any concern? And they were nice in that regard. Of course, they have their own agenda, but I said, well, I'm concerned about Raul. because he was with asthma last night and actually was trying to find medication for him. I said, well, I will go to your house and try to find out how your child is, which is part of the strategy. And they went to my house. And the guy came next day, or maybe that afternoon. And I say, I went to your house. And I say, how is my son? He said, I don't know. I said, how you don't know? He said, your wife kicked me out of your house. I said, what? And that's my wife, or my ex-wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said, when I asked for you, she said to me, you have no right to come here to my house to ask me for anything. When you took my husband last night, abruptly, without letting us know, even now, where he's at. So, tell him that Wilbur is fine. And the guy delivered the news. The guy said, who is Wilbur? I said, Wilbur is the pig. And then he said, oh, she just called me a pig. And I said, I'm afraid so.
It sounds like she had quite a fiery spirit.
She is. You don't mess with her family.
So how did you finally get to the United States?
So because I was in the Army, I got kicked off out of my job. And the next door neighbor knew that I'd been, forcibly out of my job. Because part of this, they also do what they call a moral tribunal, and that you are taking a special court by your peers, in this case, or everything that is above your rank. I was a captain, so everyone above captain in the unit could come to that trial. It's a trial, it's a moral trial. And they take your grades away, they rip it off your shirt, and they insult you and tell you everything that you don't want to know. And that was part of the process, and part of that conclusion for that moral trial was to get expelled from the hospital and the Army. And with that, I lost my job. So the United States Embassy in the Havana at that time had a program for political refugees, for people who were persecuted and, targeted by the government. And this type of condition did qualify for that. So my next door neighbor knew about that. And he knew someone who knew someone who knew someone. So I put my application through, and the process took 2 years. So I put the application in 1993. I came in 1995.
What did you do in that 2 years to support your family?
Still, in this way, so people should know that I know I'm in a courthouse, but that's really what happened. So I have a neighbor that another neighbor worked in a chicken butchery plant and in the freezers. So I went to work there, and we could take, although it was not legal, it was not illegal, because they will not do anything, but you could take the fat of the chicken and the skins, and we ate that many times. And also, from time to time, they will give you a chicken. I also raised pigs. That was Wilbur and others. We always name it, and that's a mistake. Never name your pig, because then you have a hard time killing it. And it becomes a pet.
Yes.
So it's terrible. And many things, anything that it could do. So any out of odd things. And Sandra, my ex-wife, continued to work until basically the end. So she, on that, sustained the family for a while, too.
So once you got approved to come to the United States as a political refugee, was it difficult for the United States to get you out of Cuba? Because I would imagine that...
So I think Cuba let me go, to be honest. I don't have proof of that, but I don't think that it was an accident, because that type of accident normally don't happen. So, because my father was so involved in the revolution, even during this process, because they were supposed to take me to trial for 10 years of treason. That was the sentence that they were asking for. They said, because your father's commitment to the revolution, we are going to show you how benevolent we can be. They say that verbally, so I think that they may have to do.
So once you got to the United States, where'd you go?
So prior to all these, I met Mark Peldington, was an American student from Florida International University in Jacksonville, who went to Cuba to study in the seminary to become an Episcopal priest. At the time, he was staying at the bishop's house in Havana. And the bishop's son was my last patient in my hospital, in my original hospital. This kid got stabbed, and I treated him. He was in one of my beds. So we became friends with the family. And when all this happened, this guy's father said, why do you don't write to Mark? Mark may be your sponsor. May he want to be. I wrote to Mark. At the time, he was in New Jersey. And he said, yes, I will be honored to sponsor you. He sponsored me. So at the time, he was in Connecticut. So that's how we ended up in Connecticut. We got assigned in Connecticut. And like any immigrants, right away, got to work. In my case, picking blueberries. Hate blueberries for a long time, couldn't eat it. They are freaking difficult to pick.
And it can be hot picking them.
Yeah, and when you touch it, they explode in your hands if you're not careful. And you cannot, like coffee, you cannot, drain the whole thing. You have to go one by one. So I picked blueberries, and Sandra started baking pies for a farm stand, and then groceries on the weekends. And she got a job first as a community health worker, and I got a license first. We only had a car, so I was her driver during the day, and I will work in the groceries during the afternoon, the weekends, because she has a better job with benefits. So, and then I got into a hospital where I became a nurse assistant, then into a place called the Hispanic Health Council doing research on HIV, sexual violence, and STDs, moved to another research institution, and there I went up to be a PI, a principal investigator, or co-PI. Went to India for work and training on social networks, and then went to Hartford as the assistant health director, the state of Connecticut, and here. And the rest is just history.
So you had some formal training in the United States.
Yes, my MPH was in the United States.
All right, and that was in Connecticut?
Yes, the School of Medicine in Connecticut.
All right, and how long did you work in Connecticut at the Office of Public Health or the department?
So in Connecticut, I worked at the city of Hartford probably from I have to take that back. At the state of Connecticut Health Department, I worked from 2012 to 2010 to 2015. And then I went to the city of Hartford. I went back to the state of Connecticut. I became the commissioner, which is like the state surgeon general here, but over there they call it commissioner. And did that job for 4 years. The Democratic administration of Governor Malloy ended. And the new governor asked me to stay. I wanted to stay in the job, but he had another person in mind for the job. That was his right to make an appointment. But they asked me to stay from January until that person could come. And I knew that was a possibility, so I had an interview in Miami for the health director. They assigned it to another person, but the state of Florida called me about this same time that things were happening. I said, listen, Miami was given to another person, but a position has opened in Orlando. If you are interested, we would like you to come to Orlando. And that's how it happened.
And you came to Orlando when?
I arrived in Orlando May 10, 2019. My first day at work was on the 20th of May 2019, and the first meeting for the pandemic was in December of that year.
So you had a few months that
Yeah.
were not pandemic related.
I don't remember, but yes.
So how did the pandemic shape your job after you got here?
I haven't done anything but pandemic in the last probably almost 2 years. It has changed everything. So I want people to understand this part that I'm going to say, because it's you have to, for me to be able to say this and everyone to understand what I'm going to say, they need to, for a moment, abstract or everything negative that the pandemic has, which is everything. But what the pandemic has done for me and my job is that has given me the ability to meet everyone in this community in a very short time. And that's goal in this type of job. Because when you come new to a place where you know no one, part of being able to do your job is be able to know who to work with. At this level is who to work with. And I will not know you. I will not know Kelly. I will not know many people that otherwise I have become in contact with. So on that's how the pandemic really, in my case, in my profession, really speed up a process that could have taken 10 years. But it has a lot of negative consequences to our community at large. So I probably would have preferred to spend the 10 years trying to know people than having this marathon in a year and a half.
The pandemic has been stressful for a lot of people, probably particularly so for you, being in the position that you're in. How do you handle that stress?
I'm starting to feel it. I actually was thinking yesterday that I need to take some time off. Not only for the time off itself, but off and disconnect. It has been difficult to sleep. Last night was a difficult night because your mind doesn't stop. You're always wondering what I have not done that I could do. How can I better deliver this message? And the pandemic has not stopped the other part of the job. You know, a department, 600 employees and everything else that we do. So it's really another totally complete job on top of the job that you normally have to do.
I didn't realize that the Orange County Department of Health had 600 employees.
537.
Wow. So what does your department do when it doesn't have to deal with the pandemic?
So many things. And I still don't know everything. And these institutions, and probably happened here, these bureaucratic institutions, to call it somehow, institutionals, they build over time. And they do and do and do and do and do and do more. So we do from environmental health, where we inspect tattoo parlors and piercing, septic system, and that type of approach to keep the environment safe and healthy for everyone who live in it. Include radioactive materials for some institutions. We do inspection, we do nuisance complaints in that area, we inspect well waters.
Wow.
We inspect community centers and some daycares and sometimes some schools and sometimes some clinical spaces. We also do all the emergency preparedness and response that you have seen through the pandemic. That's a big area of the department. We also, different than many other health departments, do have clinical services. We have 2 maternal and child health clinics that do prenatal care, and they also do family planning. We also have a large HIV clinic that see 2,000 patients in Orange County that are HIV positive, are our clients. We have an STD clinic that see, many cases of sexually transmissible diseases. And on top of that, we also have a TB clinic that see all our cases of TB around the county and sometimes from other counties. What else we do? We have family planning. We also have Healthy Start, which we visit families that are expecting a child to create the best conditions for the child and keep the pregnancy healthy. We also have a WIC program that has 50,000 clients, providing nutritional services to our clients, and a lot of things.
Wow. That's a lot of things to keep, a lot of balls to keep in the air.
And they are all in there.
Yeah. So, how was the city different than you thought it would be? And have you enjoyed being here? Because we've enjoyed having you.
I absolutely love the area. I never liked Miami. Although I'm Cuban, it's very crowded. It feels compacted. It feels dense. And I love to go to Miami for vacation. I love to go for a weekend. But I get tired very quick of being there. It's overwhelming. And that's an interesting because it doesn't happen in New York. But anyway, Orlando have this feeling of openness. Buildings are not tall, avenues are wide and open. So you have this feeling of freedom, I guess you can say. And also, there are so many things to do around here that you never run out of anything to do. You can go kayaking today. You can go to a park next week. You can go hiking the other day. You can go into a lake. There's so many activities. But the area has been very welcoming to me. It has not been an easy process to adapt to it, but the COVID-19 also broke all those barriers, and forced me to you have to do it. But it was difficult at the beginning. It was not an easy transition. And remember, I always wanted to stay in the other job.
Right.
And so on that sense, you come with a sense of defeat when you lose your job.
Right.
For whatever reason, in this case, a political transition. And I knew that could happen, so it was not a surprise. But it always hurt. It always hurt.
So what was difficult about the transition? I know one of the things has got to be the weather, because it's a lot hotter down here than it is in Connecticut.
So the weather was positive, but the humidity was interesting. Although I'm from Cuba.
Is Cuba not this humid?
I don't think so. I don't remember. I think that because it's a small island, very narrow, we get a lot of breeze. Florida, and especially Central Florida, with these many lakes, it feels like boiling water sometimes when it gets really humid and dense. But I love the rain in the afternoon. Love going to the beaches around here. But not knowing anyone, I knew no one. That was difficult. The first view was just driving around like a ghost, I guess, not knowing anything. But it's so good now to know where you have to exit, where you're going, to have a sense of orientation. Working at the convention center for months forced me to go in that area of town that I normally would not go, and learn even how beautiful Orlando is in all those areas. It's just, Orlando is so fast. It's growing so fast.
It is growing very fast. And we do call it the city beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of green spaces.
It's absolutely beautiful. Orlando is, and the more you go into the city, you realize there are two. There's Orlando that everyone knows in the parks and around the world. And then is the small Orlando, Eola Park, everything that happened in Thornton Park or College Park. And they are such a beautiful area of when Orlando was a small town, and they still preserve. And you get that feeling of a small town, even though you are in an area that has 1.5 million people.
Well, I certainly hope you feel welcome in the community at this stage.
I do. I do feel very welcome.
Well, Dr. Pino, thank you very much for sharing your story with me. It's fascinating, and I think literally we could talk for hours about what you experienced in Cuba, because I find it fascinating.
Yes, thank you.
But thank you for being here with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for listening to Open Ninth, Conversations Beyond the Courtroom, brought to you by Chief Judge Lisa Munyon and the Ninth Judicial Circuit Court of Florida. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Ninth Circuit FL for updates on new episodes, and subscribe to Open Ninth on your favorite podcast service.